Hello. Thank you, Rushi. Rushi's amazing. He's done all of this. He thought of this himself. He planned it all. He came up with the promotional stuff. So can we just like say thank you to him and give him a round of applause? Yeah. Okay. So it's such a pleasure to introduce Oakley to you tonight. I've prepared an 80-minute lecture on his work. Just kidding. But I do hope to do Oakley justice tonight. I've been with him in my cohort for the past 3 years. I've been able to watch his work evolve, and it's been incredible. He's one of the most wonderful poets I know, and it's been such a pleasure to be in your cohort. He does. So Oakley's official bio, he is a recently successfully defended MFA candidate. He has been published previously in the Meadow and a MISA journal, New Delta Review, and Waiting Zine, among other journals. He has just completed, you called it a master's thesis, I'm going to call it a book, Jane, a collection of poems that seeks to combine the numinous with the material by way of lyric, prose, and occasional violence. So now his unofficial bio, according to me. Oakley's poems are visceral, full of hunger and fever and decay, strange deaths, as well as even stranger births. His poems are full of, as Oakley puts it, teeth, mouths, vomit, and graves. It's a great combination. Oakley's poems are like, please tell me somebody's gonna get this reference. You know that scene in Lars von Trier's Antichrist where Willem Dafoe is walking through the woods and stumbles on a fox covered in blood with its side open and some weird unidentified organ pulsing in full view, and you realize that the fox is eating itself, and then the fox turns to him and says in a weird demon voice, somebody do it.
Kill trees.
Oakley's poems are like that. We, the readers, are Willem Dafoe walking through the woods, and Oakley's poem is the fox eating itself in the undergrowth, not really giving a shit whether you're looking or not, there to tell you just in case you weren't already aware about the chaos of the world. Oakley's poems, however, are also deeply gentle and funny in a way that is difficult for many poets to achieve, and in a way that is rare in poetry today. His poems are empathetic for the world and yet also take pleasure in the ways in which language can get closer to it. So before I welcome Oakley up here, I just want to read a short poem that I wrote that is composed entirely of Oakley's quotes on the bad poetry that exists in the world. So Oakley's also, he's not just a poet, he's also an astute critic of poetry. So this poem is called, these are all quotes. Today, I strive to write poems in such a way that the world will read them and think about the bigger underlying issues we can't seem to fully understand. Love, war, and broken hearts. And then I have some opening quotes for the poem, all by Oakley the poet. To quote the 9/11 Commission, the most important failure was one of imagination. Oakley the poet. This shit sucks. Oakley the poet. This poem is the equivalent of opening an envelope of white powder. Oakley the poet. Holy shit, where did all this hipster flaccid surrealism come from? Oakley the poet. Why can't Charles Bukowski just die? Oakley the poet. Alright, and then here's the poem. I have an image, it is so random. Lilac soldiers devour fists of blue mirth and play tingle-tangle with my heart. My petrified flower, my Beauty and the Beast reference, all of it is weeping. All of it is centered on the page. All of my lines are deep and borrowed from the back of a Celestial Seasons green tea bag. Love, 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 love. Love is a thing on Dr. Phil, more tender than any kiss. I once watched the first half of Eraserhead. I'm so surreal and funny, like Funyuns in a tarmac. A roller coaster with stained ears, and to make sure it rhymes, let me end by ordering up 2 or 3 beers. Oakley wrote this, I didn't write it. I can write a prose poem about myself and what I like and how quirky I am and my education and name drop a few writers and tell the kinds of jokes that didn't quite make the cut in a Wes Anderson movie. Please welcome Oakley, everyone.
think I'm going to use the music stand so I can operate it. That's a big if. Oh.
Figured it out.
Ready, John Boy?
How's that sound?
Woo!
Okay, Ansley, that was amazing. Thank you. Her poetry is also completely and utterly beautiful and brilliant, and is definitely not borrowed off of a Celestial Seasons bag of tea, which I swear to God, one of those timber submissions was. And yeah, I gotta thank Rushi as well, because he's done all of this. This was his idea. He's put it all together. So another round of applause, please. Okay, so I'm gonna read some poems. Most of them are from my book, Jane, and yeah. God, maybe this isn't. Yeah, it's too late. Here you go. Ezekiel 26. Tyre is Babylon's mud print. Tyre is a bedroom pregnant with axe heads and butterfly skeletons. Tyre is a window that views only a dirt floor. Tyre is a grave robber's pissing pot. Tyre is flush with purple drank. Tyre is the constipation of extinct volcanoes. Tyre is wet penicillin. Tyre is every white horse's shadow self, a bone donkey rattled off into a blazed place. The People's Gate of the Communist Party of China dissolves like shaken Jenga. The Washington Monument fondles itself into a tower of eagle shit. Every turnip in Moscow flaunts Lenin's last words, and British Petroleum replaces each lily pad on the Thames with a fingerprint of smoke. No, no, Tyre, your grave will dissolve. Logistical nightmare. Fetching dead leaves from the air. In a few moments, the tree will decide to shed skin. I am here, just beneath a limb, and I call this collecting. A few strands of yellow and red, even a crackled brown, all for the palming. I call this collecting, standing beneath the tree and refusing to jostle, even as wind over-cradles my head in dust. Unfamiliar, uncanny. I think the opposite of truth is a gesture of you folding bed sheets in front of the mirrored closet doors. The backwards apparatus of arms and linen doubles into a package of two things fleshed, signaling me, you. But that's not you, is it? Portals. Breeze tussles garbage cans. A hallway divulges a new door. The garbage visits new street corners, and the door unlocks with fresh murmur. In all these things, a short exhale emerges, which leaves a scratch too delicate to ignore. Particles spill out, smaller than thoughts, and collect in the spaces no one thinks to look. Excavation. The chamber groans. Not a hole, but a cave. Its darkness skinned away by flashlights. Every tunnel swallows its own shadow. That's what they call excavation. Hands and feet pushing through until the wet glimmers beneath us. Nothing to discover but expected burials crowding out rare earth. Yet this artifact, at least is human, or at least a human's daguerreotype, stained and scratched into limestone. We renamed the scars on that rock. We baptized this fossil, called it handprint of the posthumous, unable to speak. Luke 13. A mustard seed was in my pocket, so I burned off my pants. And the mustard seed looked like a hard pebble of unpolished obsidian, so I threw it into a municipal garbage can. And the garbage went up in green flames and flashed and began to smell like baskets of hollyhocks, and a half-smoked pack of American Spirit Blues floated upward and glowed like a room stuffed with moonlight. And the mustard seed was stuck on my forehead, so I peeled it off and swallowed it, a little ash pill. And the woman with a disabling spirit at the bus stop across the street began to stand with an erecting spirit. Her legs were stilts that thought, and a tiny door without knob opened up in the gum-drenched sidewalk. So I jumped through and hit a damp rectangle of concrete and shadow, and the mustard seed jiggled my stomach, and my whole body, arms, legs, neck, shoulders, feet, hands, fingers, toes, teeth, sex, was a nest of yellow vines, and the door shut above me. And someone was grinding fangs right into the wood, and someone was crying right into the keyhole, but I couldn't open it because my arms were vines, and my head was vines, and my legs were vines, and everything was growing, and something like the sun poked into my head, and something like the sun was squeezing blood into my heart, and everything was so warm that I started to speak, but really it was a language that only made sense without memory. Before the machine age. Before the machine age, everyone walked. One had to have shoes without memory because hazard always waited. Shoes had to forget their steps. Once I staggered towards a spot on the ridge, below an elm, above ravine, where hornets knew too well my amble. A shot in the dark. My feet betrayed me. Welts and their cousins where frost on the windshield called my body. I trampled myself downhill only to slip. There I was, a quaint cylinder of pain rolled down. Even my eyes ran in circles. After that day, I never wore another pair of shoes without amnesia. He stopped speaking for a time as the room took his temperature. The wall laid him down to sleep, just shy of 98.6. Familiar uncanny. I stood in the false gravity of another warped constellation still spilling. The leaves fell in loose bundles that made smother my shadow, that all swallowed my being there. Something rises. Snow mimics sweat. It curls off the asphalt and steams up like a curtain, a white curtain fleeing the wind. Traveler. Your car makes drift through yesterday and last year and tomorrow and after and later and before, marking each stop with a popped clutch and oil pockmark. Those drab ribbons of engine grease inscrutable to most eyes after the sun sets. In the end, your tire deflates by running across an over-sharp femur gone grimy in rain. Or your antenna loses signal when the air beneath Pompeii shrink wraps in cold crimson glitter. The first person. Your name has no shadow. Its repellent little face discharges a cough, Not even the contours of the alphabet subdue the lines that mark the cheeks, and the retch of word pantomimes the creation of Adam inside of my breath. CPAP. Each night or every other night, please remember your face swaps with tubes, after which supply lines drift through your head, a dream about the war, the Jeep trailing away from you in the fog. You dream about standing still within Abendroth mist, that air which pushes exhale into the sleeper. When you sleep, a new face takes care of you. Uncanny after the fact. My fruit bowls diminish. The peaches and avocados fall back into pits. The apples paint themselves green and shrink like ice cubes on crimson cast iron. But the smell of an orchard refuses to lose any echo. No corner of the kitchen is stainless. The phantom entrails of bark and harvest ripen in lanes of grout in between cobwebs stitched across ceiling and wall. I throw one peach pit after another, and the air heavies like smoke. True to form, I lose every thought. Acts 3. He was being carried into the gate with a paper cup at his feet, whose color had shifted from pearl white to concrete on the inside after so many nickels and dimes had drifted down its open throat. He had legs and arms, but neither could rustle themselves into movement, and on his head was a Burger King crown upon which someone had written Milagros Perdidos. His name was Alms, so that whenever he disclosed his identity, a coin might appear in the cup's mouth. He was being carried into the gate when Peter and John gazed upon him, and Alms said something along the lines of "Dinero, por favor," to which the apostles continued to tunnel their vision into the lame man, 4 eyeballs peering into a tar pit until it became snow. In the distance, an elm tree skeleton was awash with pink leaves that beckoned rain. A car horn beat out the exact rhythm of surrounding conversations until the traffic pulled over to listen. Peter, whose name means stone, ushered a sigh which to Alms sounded like Miranos. So he lifted his eyes, and his bones began to set before thought could argue, and his arms, like the elm, were branches of pink leaves that lifted and grasped and pushed, and the leaves peeled off like snake skin and revealed new flesh. Alms lost his name. He ran, he swallowed the paper crown, he abandoned the paper cup with a kick, he careened the temple gate, he blushed noises to heaven. John said, "Hermanos, hermanos, hermanos." Plastic bag. The tree with unusual lungs in its branches, the tree that oscillates with white and blue flowers, and the flowers that switch limbs after breeze, the flowers that nest only for a time, that inhale and exhale or fly away completely or fall into another tree, the lungs like false leaves which never suffocate, the flowers that jump out of the garbage and marry the tree. Something in order to, after Heidegger. When we are using equipment, it has a tendency to disappear. We are not aware of it having any characteristics at all. Hubert Dreyfus. I am called hammer. Wood digests, the nails, tongue pushes. I am called clobber thing. Walls standing in flock of 4 and 4 were scattered, and room drifted wayward like steam out of bath. I am called Hook Face. The nails are dug from wombs, they litter carpet, they smile less on the floor. I am called Basement Dweller, sit in the dark unhatched by way of non-use. The house is built and the paintings are hung without me. I am called the other thing, in the forest, in the mine, in the factory, so many of them unborn because they're already here. Come expecting a miracle. Bitter stomach and flash upon a sidewalk, the ripe dew decaying in small packages of forgotten seeds and half-remembered tulip bulbs, the now or never quality of life that fractures earth before shovelfuls condense a proper place for this green head or that green back. No, space and place are just little obliterations. The bitter stomach is only free, split open and emptied of blossoms. The concrete is a stupid reminder. Where am I at? How am I doing? Good? Time-wise good? Bad?
Time-wise good.
Over the top?
You're good.
Magic? Is it? It doesn't? I don't like... I don't know if I want to deal with non-existence. Not until I get my degree. Overglow. Sorry. Overglow. Be in the ground. It hugs you just before the stars stammer inside the ballast, just until the ship crowns over a shoreline. Be in the ground. Make the earth flurry with your kicking. The ship crowns over the beachhead and stammers inside dry sand, just before the stars glaze azure and red. Be in the ground which jostles in rhythm with the corpse just after the ship has its capsize across the dune, or the spine pummeled overbursts, or the stars crumble with the aftershock, the dark ripening within. Spirit rapping. The medium is speaking. She says, come here, say something with my hands. Fingers clenched, now open, and etch a short murmur on butcher paper. The pencil shimmies a phrase and underlines it. I'm here with you, but I can take us somewhere else. For a while, that's all there is to see and say, and maybe the presence departs with a gust of rumpled curtain until language spills everywhere, first into itself like fire bloomed backwards, and then over everything else, the butcher paper and floor drown in fresh sentences, the eyelids tattoo in more and more words. There is nothing more to see but the blackening phrase. Only the table remains clean, what with all of the knocking that pounds somewhere under the surface. Zechariah 11. The sheep fumbled out of the forest fire, one at a time. Jane, standing at the edge of the woodland, inhaled thimblefuls of cedar smoke while patting each passing member of the flock on their head. At times, fragments of wool came off in her hand, but before she could pick it clean, the fibers, like the still smoking cedars, evaporated into ash. This happened enough times that eventually the wool between the ears of each sheep turned chalky ebony. Jane wanted so badly to wipe her hand against her jeans, but every sheep needed greeting, and the transfer of wool ash to head became a cycle that increased rapidly at every turn. The assembly line was unforgiving. Troubled bleats escaped the flock as ash drifted into their eyes and sputtered across their noses. Jane felt her hand blistering somewhere beneath all the dark smudging, and each new stroke of a head was like sunburn rubbing against a hot seatbelt buckle. Grimace and protest was mutual between prophet and beast, and just as the ash migrated further and further over the woolly bodies, so too did Jane's wrist and forearm blacken. When the final stragglers had passed on, only a tuft of gray tail was left unaltered, while Jane was smeared pitch all the way up to her shoulder. She sighed, clenched and unclenched her fist with teeth bared, and turned toward the path leading away from the woods. And that was when she heard one last minute bleat emerging from the forest fire between cackles of flame. It was not an adult, but a lamb who now trudged towards her. He was not simply ash-covered, but burned, with singed wool and orange coals for hooves. Jane fell to her knees and frantically attempted to clear away some of the dark residue by spitting onto her hands and rubbing them over the lamb. But her hands sizzled the moment they touched his coat, and she jumped backwards, waving her arms in the air. The lamb, whose feet were making the grass smoke, trotted over to Jane as she sat half sprawled and dumbfounded on the ground. He began licking the ash off her hand, and with each contact of tongue and skin, Jane sensed the blisters and scars dissolving. And when the lamb straddled her knees to get a better lick at the arm and shoulder, his hooves did not burn, but were like damp washcloths warmed over in a microwave. The lamb licked one final spray of ash from her shoulder and jumped off. Jane, still on the ground, gazed into the lamb's eyes, and he in turn gazed back. Jane wanted to say something, to make some sort of sound, to emit any kind of communicative gesture, but she couldn't. The lamb let out one long baa, deeper than his body should have permitted, and turned around, ambling back into the blazing coppice. Last one, but it's on a bunch of pages. So, I'll look weird reading it. See? It's already happening. Bread. Because God did not make death. Wisdom 1:13. Where the table sits, a hole yarns and everything flatware, mugs, napkins, butter, levitates. Air smeared with weight is called gravity. Anchors crumble, the tablecloth floats. Candle wax intermarries, while flames petrify, haloing the mound. Now bread is water. Bread aflow into blaze, aflow into me. I have only one jaw to withhold tongue, and that jaw snaps away. And a gash speaks, pleads hunger, a prayer thrusts everything into the place where tongue and teeth recognize each other in the same flower bed of a skull. My mouth deteriorates with petal fragments pieced together on the corpse I wear. Prayer is a draft of cobalt smoke lifting arms and legs and lungs. Short circuit bread into birth, make lemons and oranges and soil and paw prints replace the sky. There are no clouds. There are only suspensions. Womb as a verb and water steams into birth. The ocean fierce with weight, lifts with the moon, the candles, the dishes smolder white or black or remain, the present things